So, good morning, everybody. Today on Sports File, we're going to take a look at probably one of the most popular heavyweight champions of the 1980s and of all time. Now, they called him Hercules for obvious reasons, one of the most well physically developed fighters in the history of the game. If he had any body fat, he probably had a bar of it from somebody else. We're going to talk about Michael Dwayne Weaver, better known as Mike Weaver. Now, Mike had a very distinguished four decade career from 1972 to 2000, and he held the WBA title, which would be normally considered the lineal title or the progressive title from the original heavyweight champion John L. Sullivan, but due to machinations, they gave it to Larry Holmes. But he was a WBA champion from 1980 to 1982. Now, he got his physicality from a stint in the United States Marine Corps from 68 to 71, and he was also a Vietnam veteran. So he had a toughness that nobody could teach you inside or outside the ring. Now, like most Marines, he had a great interest in boxing, and he started amateur boxing and trading, and eventually fought a major contender called Dwayne Bobby, who ended up as an Olympic medalist in 1972. And in their fight, Bobick and Weaver had a great contest, but Weaver lost the fight despite knocking Bobick down. Now, by 1972, Weaver decided to turn pro, and for some reason, in the early part of his career, he suffered some very tough losses, and for a while, he was considered a journeyman opponent. Now, many times he was brought in at short notice for canceled fighters or fights against more experienced and developed contenders. And he also, besides Larry Holmes, was used as a sparring partner for Muhammad Ali, and also did work with Ken Norton as a sparring partner. And that's where his nickname came in. Ken Norton was a very developed fighter, and for him to call Weaver Hercules was a compliment itself, because Norton was one of the most beautifully sculpted athletes of all time. So for Weaver to get that designation from the king of great bodies up to heavyweights in the 1970s was pretty important. Now, despite some of early losses, including fringe contenders like Howard Smith and journeyman Larry Frazier, who had nothing to do with Joe Frazier, just a tomato can, he showed signs of improvement. A lot of writers of the time, including Ring Magazine or Boxing Illustrated, said he was very underrated and still had a lot of promise. He did fight both Bobicks later on, losing a 10-round decision to Rodney, and loss on cuts to Dwayne. But he was losing, but he was still, gaining respect and experience. Because back then, there was two types of heavyweights. There was heavyweights that ran undefeated and had a short career after they started losing, or fighters like Weaver, who would give you a good fight no matter who it was, comparable to people like Bert Cooper and Carla Trude Williams later on. Now, in 1976, Weaver had a big victory against veteran Jody Ballard. And then again, some tough losses follow. He lost two close decisions, 78. First to contender and former future USBA champion Stan Ward for the California State Heavyweight title, and then to Leroy Jones for the North American Heavyweight belt. Now, again, he was losing. His size and format was not conducive for picking up points. Knockouts were his forte. He had a great knockout record during the fights he did win, but he would almost always lose on points because he was fighting quicker and heavier fighters. Now, in 78, this is where everything changed for Weaver. He got a new team and manager, and he reeled off 5 straight knockouts, 2 of which came over top-ranked contenders. Now, in October 78, was one of his biggest victories. He came off the floor to knock out hard-hitting Colombian top 10 fighter Bernardo Mercado in 5. And he finally took on his nemesis again, Stan Ward, knocking him out in 9 to win the United States Championship. Now, you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, at the time, there was many title fights for then champion Larry Holmes. And I think in total there was almost 25. And these wins, because Holmes was run by Don King, he saw money they could make through on Weaver, helped him get him a high-profile fight against Holmes. And of all places, Madison Square Garden which was the mecca of boxing for many years up until the 2000s. Now, HBO bought the rights to the fight because Weaver was so lowly regarded. The fight was seen as a mismatch. Now, this is one of the first key HBO title fights that kind of showed that HBO was willing to take a chance on up and coming fighters. Now, Weaver entered a fight with a really, unheralded record of 20-8. But Weaver, again, the fights he had won, he showed improvement, and Weaver showed how improved he was. He was better than expected at that fight. Gave Holmes a tough battle. Now, Weaver was slightly ahead on points going into the 10th round, but Holmes rallied and he decked Weaver with an uppercut in the 11th and stopped him on his feet in the 12th. So it was another fight that Weaver couldn't finish off. Now, although Weaver lost, this surprise showing had made him a deserved high-profile name. And now, because he had to give up the United States belt for a little while, he got it back and retained it with a 12-round decision over Scott Ledoux later on, whom he outboxed rather than slug with. And he started changing his format. He was more like a 1 or 2 punch knockout fighter, and he was using more of a jab. But you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, Weaver could only work so much in a jab because he was generally a smaller heavyweight. In most cases, 6'1" and a 78-inch reach is not going to get you much on the jab unless you were, accurate with it. But ladies and gentlemen, this is where the big change in Weaver's life occurred, and what made him a folk hero to many people, including me, in 1980. In March of 1980, he was booked to fight the new WBA champion John Tate, who was seen as a successor of Muhammad Ali, big guy, Louisville, and he fought in Tate's backyard, Knoxville. And Knoxville was a boxing hotbed for years, and the Tennessee fans really came out for the fight. Tate was an amateur star for Team USA, the 76 Olympics. Now, as a pro, he had put together a 20-0 decision and won the vacant WBA title, which was Ali's belt, by decisioning South African Jerry Coetzee over 15 rounds, and of all places, Pretoria, South Africa, in front of 86,000 fans. Now, Weaver versus Tate, the knockout is still considered one of the greatest of all time. They were the greatest kind of late round comeback. Ladies and gentlemen, back in the day, most title fights were 15 rounds, even non-world title fights. In 2019, if you don't remember that most title fights were 15 rounds, most 15-round fight back then were grueling. Now, Tate, who outweighed Weaver by about 25-30 pounds and by about 3 inches taller, dominated Weaver for most of the first 10 rounds. But then, for some reason, Weaver got a second win, and he pushed it, he turned it around, and he started making Tate back up. But according to commentators, he left his style a little bit too late, and with only 5 rounds left, Tate was, maybe too ahead on points. And in any fight, we always call it the Weaver rule: never give up, keep on fighting, because this will happen. With only 40 seconds left in the 15 round, now Weaver caught Tate bouncing off the ropes towards him with a devastating left hook, and the hook was so devastating, Tate fell flat in his face and didn't get up. He was counted up. Press pictures showed Tate concussed, while Weaver, for some reason, was so excited that I've never seen it since. He did a kind of a half gainer and a half handstand. And in the words of Archie Moore many years before, when you see a fighter fall on his face because of a knockdown, they don't get up. And you could have counted to 150 to 2,000. John Tate was just laid out like you wouldn't believe. Now, because the WBA division for heavyweights at the time was mixed with a lot of international demands, Weaver was forced to make his first defense into, in all places, the banned city, Sun City in South Africa, which at the time most American performers and entertainers will not go to, because it was basically a protectorate for the Afrikaner South Africa. He went to fight on Coetzee a second time, Now in this fight, Weaver was hurt and nearly knocked down the 8th round, but rallied down the stretch and knocked Coetzee out in the 13th round. And Coetzee, who was a great counter puncher, had never previously been down, amateur or a pro. Now in '81, he continued his success for the title, winning a 15-round decision against James Quick Tillis, and after 1 year of activity, he was still holding a belt. Now into 1982, he was supposed to take on highly regarded Michael Dokes in Las Vegas. Now in this fight, Dokes came out fast and dropped Weaver inside the opening minute. Now when Weaver covered up in the ropes and Dokes missed a few swings, referee Joey Curtis stopped the fight after 63 seconds and awarded Dokes the victory by TKO. Now this caused controversy due to the timing of the stoppage, and there were some calls that fixed in the arena and went in the press. But the big problem was the fight occurred about a month before the Ray Mancini-Dooku Kim fight in Vegas that led to Kim's death due to the fight not being stopped quick enough. The referee at the time, they decided it was he didn't want to see Weaver have a fatal blow, but a lot of media outlets talked about it, and ESPN actually later ranked this as the 7th worst bad call by a referee in the fight in their 2008 list. Now, Weaver was given a rematch with Dokes on May 20, 1983, which ended a 15-round majority draw. Under the referees, two judges had it even, while another one had Dokes ahead by 4 points. Now, Weaver had another title shot in 1985, taking on that lightly regarded Pink Lon Thomas, and lost by 8-round knockout. He did have a big victory against Carl Detrude Williams later on, but his career at a high level was pretty well done. His career ended in the age of 45 with a 6-round KO rematch loss to Larry Holmes, and this came, of all things, in November 17, 2000. But you look at Weaver's overall record, he lost to Lennox Lewis on his Lennox Lewis ways up. He fought Bone Crusher Smith, he fought Burt Cooper, David Jacko, Razor Ruddock, Tony Anthony. There was a lot of top contenders he took on, and in most cases, the best way to describe Weaver, he wasn't your typical heavyweight. He was sort of like a large cruiserweight, best weight probably 205, 208 pounds, quick hand speed, quick knockout, but he would give you 5 to 6 or 7 rounds of good fighting, and from there either he won or he lost. He wasn't scared to lose. He wasn't scared to go against any fighter. If anything, those that didn't want to fight him were cowards. But for Michael Dokes, he was never a coward inside or outside the ring. Now he's still involved with the sport in many means. He's been a role model to a lot of people through the years. But the only thing I can say about Mike Weaver, he should be remembered more often as for boxing fans. But a lost era between Ali and Tyson and the Holmes generation kind of talks about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, keep punching on this beautiful Tuesday. We wish everybody happy spring. If you have a chance, check out Mike Weaver's various fights on YouTube and the full Weaver Tate fight. And I still am amazed how he won that fight. He never gave up. If this was a 12-round fight, ladies and gentlemen, he would never have been champion. But the 15-round fights, this was one of the last high-level 15-round fights that led to a 15-round knockout of this quality and this impact, no pun intended. So again, ladies and gentlemen, have a great day, keep punching, and we'll see you on the flip. Bye.